welcome to Wrestling at Random. I'm Jeremy Deemer.
And I am Adam Summers.
This is the podcast where every week we review a classic pro wrestling show, a weekly show from a streaming service.
That's right. This is season 2 of Wrestling at Random. So no pay-per-views, no major arena cards, no one-off TV specials or Clash of the Champions, nothing like that here on season 2. It is all random weekly episodes of pro wrestling television from pretty much any promotion all around the world that we were able to find and dump into the randomizer. Thousands upon thousands of episodes of wrestling TV that the randomizer can spit out for us. And this week, I think this would definitely qualify as pretty random. It is an episode of Primetime Wrestling building to the first Wrestlemania that I ever saw, Wrestlemania 5.
So this was the second pay-per-view you watched.
Yes, and fun fact that the pay-per-view that this is building to, Wrestlemania 5, my second pay-per-view that I ever watched, that show went against the Clash of the Champions, Steamboat versus Flair from '89 that we reviewed, and I actually ended up watching that show live instead of the pay-per-view that I ordered that same night as a small kid. But in any event,
this show is building to WrestleMania 5. This show was February 20th, 1989. So we are April 2nd, 1989 would be WrestleMania 5. So we're well a month ahead of the event, and we've got almost a full card for WrestleMania 5.
They kind of start laying the card out throughout the show, which we'll get to. It's actually funny. I didn't fully grasp how this, because really when you watch this, and we'll get into it, but these face-to-face debates, I would have thought that this is like the final week's build,
right,
to WrestleMania.
The go home
yeah, exactly. Or maybe the second to last week. Like there still is like 5-6 weeks till Mania happens.
Yeah, so the show is Primetime Wrestling. Now, WWF Primetime Wrestling aired on the USA Network. Its first time it aired was January 1st, 1985. And its original hosts were Jesse Ventura and Jack Reynolds. Eventually, Gorilla Monsoon would move in to be Ventura's co-host, and eventually we would get the pairing that would become synonymous with Primetime Wrestling and the classic years of Primetime Wrestling. Bobby the Brain Heenan would join Gorilla Monsoon to become the hosting tandem on April 28th, 1986. And this show, I remember watching this show as a kid because this was, the format of the show was you would get a lot of house show matches.
Yes.
And you would get the angles that would have aired on the syndicated Wrestling Challenge or WWF Superstar shows. So you would get the key angles, you would get the house show matches, some competitive, some squash matches, and you would get the event center segments where they would do interviews, deep dives, and everything was just interspersed with the hilarious musings and the unbelievable comedic chemistry that you got from Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby the Brain Heenan. And looking at this show's history, it would eventually go through a couple of format changes. In 1991, it went with a studio audience and became not as good.
Yes, that is absolutely true.
With Vince McMahon as a host with Bobby Heenan. And then eventually it went in until 1993, it went into like a panel style with a bunch of different hosts. Eventually, the final episode of Primetime Wrestling would air on January 4th, 1993, and WWF Monday Night Raw would replace Primetime Wrestling in the time slot on the USA Network, where it still airs as of 2020.
Yeah, and that's you mentioned Primetime and something that being something that you watched every week. I mean, that Primetime was probably my only main WWF show that I would watch every week or most weeks. Like, it was the one appointment viewing for me. as someone who was not as hardcore of a WWF fan growing up as compared to watching the NWA, watching wrestling on TBS. But like you said, primetime, the fact that not only you said, house shows, but particularly they were major arena house shows, as we'll see in the matches here. You saw matches from Boston Garden or from Madison Square Garden or from the Spectrum in Philadelphia. There was some alert to that.
Gardens, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Big major arenas that looked really cool and unique and distinctive on TV. And then, as you said, everything was tied together with just Gorilla and Bobby, to the point to where a lot of weeks it really didn't matter if anything else on the show was good, because you knew you're going to be getting you're going to be entertained by those two pretty much on a regular basis. You could bank on that.
The show opens with the classic Primetime Wrestling sweet saxophone sounds in their theme song.
And I was thrilled that was not replaced or swapped out for some generic music here still on the WWE Network.
But not the normal graphic for Primetime Wrestling, where we get a graphic that just says face to face. Then we see a graphic with a Hogan and Savage. We got a Warrior and Rude, Andre and Jake the Snake, Heenan Red Rooster, Demolition, Powers of Pain, Rougeaus and Bushwhackers, Hercules, King Haku, Dino Bravo, Ronnie Garvin. And so almost the entire card they run down in the opening graphic for what WrestleMania is going to be.
Sort of promoting these face-to-face showdowns. And it's also noteworthy that while this was a regular weekly episode of Primetime, in the sense that it aired in the regular time slot, this was somewhat of a special episode. Not only was it these face-to-face debates, it also was a 3-hour episode as opposed to the usual 2-hour weekly show.
Yeah, we cut to Gorilla Monsoon and Bobby Heenan, not behind the normal desk in the studio you would see them in. They're instead sitting in chairs in front of an obvious green screen that shows
the obvious. Well, not only is the green screen obvious, is they've got it like slightly, the arena is sort of blurred in the background. There's also no ambient sound at all. Like they're in a studio with a static, blurry image of the arena in Binghamton, New York. And they're trying to tell us, and they're trying to act like they're there, and they'll occasionally look back as though they're like even like the perspective is all wrong. Like there's nowhere where you could sit in an arena where you would be tilted toward that angle of the crowd.
No, but Heenan immediately, he's looking down and all around like he's really in the arena. It was pretty good stuff in the first 5 seconds from him.
The stench of the humanoids made it through the green screen, I guess.
And so we will we'll see. Monsoon tells us that this is a special edition of Primetime Wrestling. We will have face-to-face debates moderated by Vince McMahon. And while Monsoon is running down the show, Heenan turns around and yells, "Same to you!" And Monsoon hits him with the classic, "Will you stop?" And we're off to a hot start. So I loved Heenan selling the fact that they're in an arena, and it was great stuff early.
Yeah, and Gorilla tells us, as you mentioned, the format of Primetime Wrestling will hold here, as he says, we'll see great matches from all across the United States, and that begins. He tells us that the Twin Towers will be in action. It is the Twin Towers taking on competitors already in the ring. Not a particularly competitive match, I am assuming, as I see that it is the tag team of Mark Ming, no relation to Ming, and Ricky Ataki.
That's right. This match is from Tucson, Arizona, and Mark Ming and Ricky Ataki are in the ring. The Twin Towers come out. They are the Big Boss Man and his partner Akeem, the former one-man gang.
Akeem, the African Dream. They had the best entrance music of all time. At least it is on the 80s WWF Mount Rushmore of entrance music. Just fantastic stuff. And the visual of these men, the Big Boss Man is looking very big. He's looking very, very young. And as we've talked about, his weight fluctuated dramatically, and he was in a heavier phase for sure. They're accompanied to the ring by Slick. And then there is Akeem, the African Dream. And again, the idea that the one-man gang was the man they chose to play the character of Akeem, the African Dream. He has blue pants, yellow boots. His entrance gear is just like huge yellow overshirt and a yellow hat, and he does this dance that I had completely forgotten about, but is this dance and hand gyration that as a very small child, I am not ashamed to admit, I imitated regularly.
Oh, that's phenomenal.
It's actually probably the closest to dancing I've ever done in my life was imitating Akeem as like an 8-year-old child.
I imagine you in your 30s coming out to the dance floor and just defaulting to the Akeem dance because that's so natural.
If someone told me to dance, it's probably the only muscle memory that exists. So it may, if I was ever forced to do that, it may happen. They get in the ring and Akeem, he removes the hat, this amazing hat. He removes this yellow overshirt, and his ring gear is somehow more ridiculous. It's these blue tights. He has like a singlet over the pants, but then he has a short sleeve blue shirt under the top part of the singlet. It has to be seen to be believed. And again, imagining the physique of the one-man gang in this gear, it is something else.
Yeah, and the song that they were dancing to as they come out is, of course, Jive Soul Bro from Slick, and he sings his own theme song. It was on the Pile Driver album that came out in 1987, and what a fantastic song, and a great theme song. It was a great theme song for Big Boss Man and Akeem to come out to. So they're introduced, and we're introduced to the announce team, which is Tony Schiavone. That Tony Schiavone, hot off the presses of NWA World Championship Wrestling, heading to WWF here. He's here with Lord Alfred Hayes.
This is an actual, real announce team that happened. This is not a fever dream. It is the brief stay of Tony Schiavone in the WWF after he left the NWA. He's paired with Lord Alfred Hayes, and it is, I mean, I will say that like Lord Alfred Hayes is really, like, he is helpful. He is trying to steer Tony Schiavone in the direction of announcing WWF style. But Tony is Tony. He is just a fantastic announcer at this point. And we'll get into it in more depth later because there's better examples of this as the show moves along. But he is trying so hard to make these matches seem like athletic competitions and talk about strategy. And then you've got, Akeem in the ring. And so it is something else. Really, the only note I have about the action, if you can call it that, in this match is early on, Mark Ming like bull rushes the boss man, but he kind of stumbles and collapses in mid shoulder block attempt. And I was greatly amused by that.
Now, let's talk about this team for a second. For a jobber team, I want to commend them on their wrestling gear.
Yes.
Quick fashion corner. Ataki has a white singlet and long red trunks. His partner has the inverse, long white trunks and a blue singlet. So they almost were coordinated as a jobber team, and you know how much I appreciate when people coordinate their gear here in the ring. So
in my mind, this is because they were the long reigning Arizona State champions of the non-existent and completely made up in my mind Tucson Championship Wrestling. I'm going with that.
Yeah, Bossman, he kills Ataki quickly. Bossman and Akeem, they do the move where they just squash him as he's just hanging over the middle rope.
This is if you recall, many years later, who was it? The double bear hug squish. It was when the Yeti showed up in WCW at that Cobo Hall pay-per-view. This was that move. There was one weird thing where like Akeem throws Mark Ming like Irish whip style into the corner, and Bossman like tries to grab Ming before he gets to the corner, but he kind of gives up on it. It was weird. At this point, Lord Alfred Hayes is really trying to get the jobbers over and saying they're well-seasoned, quite good wrestlers.
He does that a few times in this show.
He does. There was also the match had a weird, like they had a hard cam, but then they had like a further away hard cam. It was basically like they had like the Dallas Stars hard cam, but then they also went to the San Jose Sharks hard cam at various times. For our hockey fan listeners, it was very strange. My favorite part of this match, though, was Lord Alfred Hayes telling us that Slick is a dance choreographer and he taught Akeem how to dance.
Bossman.
I love this so much because it actually made me think that, like, by proxy, Slick was my childhood dance choreographer.
I want vignettes of Slick teaching Akeem to dance, and I want vignettes of childhood you watching them teach them how to dance.
Yes, and probably both you'd have like Big Boss Man sitting in a corner just shaking his head.
So yeah, Bossman sent Ming off the ropes, catches him in the bear hug. We mentioned Akeem off the ropes, runs into his back. Ming just getting squashed in between the Twin Towers.
The squisher, as it's technically known.
A big splash by Akeem. 3 count. Your winners are the Twin Towers. 0 offense. Not even a punch thrown by the Jobber.
No, the only attempted offense was that collapsing shoulder block attempt from Mark Ming, the well-seasoned jobber that he was. After the match, the boss man handcuffs both of them together, throws one over the top rope. He's hitting him with nightsticks. This is a perfectly fine mean guy team beating up jobbers match.
Back to Heenan and Monsoon. They have a very comical big man versus little man argument.
Yes, where Bobby confuses himself and starts talking about a good little man will always beat a good big man, and Gorilla is just like, you're stupid. What are you talking about this? We then go to commercial. We come back, and it's from the pages of World Wrestling Federation magazine. Here's Update. A really descriptive name here. It is not the Control Center. It is Update.
We run down the Mania 5 card, and then we're back to Heenan and Monsoon again. We're told tag titles will be up for grabs, 3 against 2, as Mr. Fuji is putting on the tights for that one. First time in history, we will have a 3-on-2 match for the tag titles at WrestleMania.
A terrible precedent to set, as many episodes of Monday Night Raw for decades later will attest to. I'm also confused, though, because they told us earlier on in the show that coming up, we would be seeing Demolition versus the Powers of Pain in a straight-up 2-on-2 tag team match for the World Wrestling Federation Tag Team Championship. So, okay.
The face-to-face confrontations, like you mentioned, are in Binghamton, New York. Our first face-to-face is the Powers of Pain and Mr. Fuji with Demolition, your tag team champions.
Let's describe the setup here, because this is not what you would think. Modern wrestling, they'll have debates or contract signings where it happens in the ring. No, this is like the interview area that you would see used a lot, like on Superstars, where it's just off the entranceway, kind of behind the ringside floor seats. And we have a stage set up, and there are podiums, I guess lecterns actually set up across, and there is Vince McMahon in his powder blue suit, and it appears as though he is wearing like matching shoes, but they are gym shoes.
So Fuji and the Powers of Pain are at one lectern, and Fuji calls them stupid for agreeing to the 3-on-2
in Mr. Fuji voice, which is great. Then we get promos from the Barbarian and the Warlord.
Terrible. Horrible.
Barbarian, at least like he's got his accent, so like whatever. I heard this and I immediately heard decades later Barbarian voice apologizing for walking in on me in the bathroom in a local small rec center in suburban Chicago, Illinois in like 2017 or 2018, whatever it was. Same voice here.
Yeah, so his is a Barbarian, as a character and his accent, that's fine. But the Warlord is a terrible promo.
Yes, Barbarian says we have no fear to you, and I believe he called himself, and I love this, he called himself the Monster of the Massacre, which is just fantastic, and someone should steal that. I then write down, Warlord tries to cut a promo. The mic falls. This man has the least convincing, scary laugh ever.
Vince says, a parting comment from you, Mr. Fuji. And Fuji says...
Then he immediately cuts Mr. Fuji off.
Yeah, he goes, axe and smash. And then that's all he says is axe and smash. And Vince says, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Yeah, it feels like there's a running joke where Vince says, like, someone, like, legitimately, he says someone has 90 seconds, and then it's when you cut the 0 off, it's basically 9 seconds. And then, yeah, we have Smash, who, again, here Barry Darso has about as much of a Russian accent as he did when he played a Russian, meaning he does not have one. He calls Fuji a stooge, and then I realize, oh God, I remember in the build to this, watching the build to WrestleMania 5, that all they did was say Fuge the Stooge a million times, and that holds true here.
Yeah, we had some lines about everyone knows how you catch a big fat rat. You got to put out a big piece of bait. Ego. You want these belts so bad you can taste them. The bait is out. So obviously talking about Mr. Fuji, getting him in the ring. These two are in kindergarten while we are working on a master's degree.
That was great.
I laughed because I'm like, why didn't he say he has a master's degree? Instead, he's working on his master's degree.
Yes. Well, it may be that he's Axe may have been a little bit sensitive to the fact that, like, everyone talked about how old he looked. So he went that is working on his master's, that he didn't have his master's. Really, like, the only takeaway from this, and it's even more so when you watch the match later, is that, like, both these teams, and Demolition was actually at least a decent team, but it was like you had like half a Legion of Doom from each team, and you tried to combine them into a match and make them the Legion of Doom, make them the Road Warriors, and they still just weren't.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, this was fine. I was amused by... Really, I was mostly amused by Vince cutting Fuji off immediately after telling him he could talk.
Monsoon and Heenan again. Heenan says, how do I get down to the arena floor for my face-to-face? And they talk about Hercules and Haku. And Monsoon says, the crown was stolen by you and Blassie from the Beacon Theater. And Heenan says, Blassie, never heard of the guy. This was great stuff. After commercial, Heenan continues the gag, pretending to lose his balance because he's so close to the edge of the arena that he's not actually at. This was great stuff by Heenan.
Yes. The great stuff ends quickly. This is like a jump cut to like a crime scene as far as joy to sadness, as we go to, I believe, and then it is confirmed, it is the Boston Garden. You see the lovely parquet floor. We get a nice, really cool sweeping shot of the arena, but that all ends. The good stuff ends as we learn that it will be Boris Zukov taking on Coco Beware. And the scene is that Boris Zukov is about to sing the Russian anthem. He starts singing. It's terrible. Everyone boos. The music hits. And at first I'm super excited because I'm like, oh my God, we're going to hear Coco Beware's song, Do the Bird, Bird, Bird.
No.
I love that song as a child. That is not what we get here.
You pile driver. I had the opposite reaction. I'm like, ooh, pile driver.
No, I wanted Do the Bird, Bird, Bird. That was my nostalgia was kicking in there.
No, I wanted Sometimes Love Sounds Like a Fight. It sounds like an argument. It sounds just like a pile driver. Great lyrics. Good song.
Yes. Singer-songwriter of renown, I'm sure, put that together. Coco Beware emerges from the entranceway. This is one of those awesome old venues where the entrance is opposite the hard cam. Very cool, the way, like, Madison Square Garden. Coco has Frankie, the bird. He's wearing a green headband, a shiny long towel vest, and then he has long white trunks, but then he has short green trunks over the long white trunks. He's also wearing some classic Coco Beware, like big goggly glasses. He's looking exactly as I would have expected and hoped Coco Beware to look in 1989.
So nothing but house show stalling early. all
This
stalling.
is AWA 87 and then some.
Koko tries to get a USA chant going. Zukov turns to yell at the fans, which allowed Koko to get a roll-up for a near fall. Then more stalling.
I did not even notice any of this because I was enjoying on the arena or the low, the ringside camera shots, seeing the Bruins and Celtic Spanners hanging up in Boston Garden, just taking in the ambiance that this match was taking place in the Boston Garden. I was shaken from that though, as I hear Lord Alfred Hayes again. This is Lord Alfred Hayes and Tony Schiavone on the call. Lord Alfred says that Boris has, quote, a big cranium, and then questions, is there a big brain in there? It could all be bone. I howled with laughter. Lord Alfred Hayes was great on this show.
Finally, Koko on the attack. It looked like Koko was going to run him into the buckle head first, but Zukov just went down face first to the mat. So Koko just rammed him face first in the mat a couple more times. And then, Zukov on offense, which consisted of lots of choking, a bear hug, but anytime I see a bear hug, I hear Gorilla Monsoon yelling in my ear, "It's too low, why bother?"
Yes,
if you don't
my
know
notes are very similar. I write, now he puts on a bear hug, and I want to know if Gorilla thinks it is all caps too low.
If you don't know what we're talking about, go back to season 1. Listen to our Royal Albert Hall show from season 1 to hear that review. It was hilarious.
I also note that at a certain point in this match, they just start doing the first wrestling podcast ever here in 1989. They quit talking about the match, which again, fair, because there is nothing to talk about. Tony is shilling Wrestlemania, which is just bizarre. Lord Alfred Hayes says, and I quote, "There was a tremendous fracas between Ultimate Warrior and Rick Rude at the pose down." And at this point, I remember that angle as well. But just more great verbiage from Lord Alfred Hayes.
The finish comes.
And yeah, this continues, this match.
Yes, but we got to the finish finally, where Zukov misses a headbutt. Koko battles back. He's thrown into the ropes. He's thrown in the ropes. He leaps to the middle turnbuckle. He does a head fake, like he's gonna do a crossbody. Zukov drops down. As he gets back up, Koko goes to the top rope, hits the drop kick off the top, gets the pin. Your winner, Koko Beware.
Koko Beware's top rope drop kick was so cool. You can't compare it to anyone else's. It was almost like he's doing a top rope double stomp, but with his opponent standing. The way he just sort of bounces off of him, very cool. But by far my favorite part of this match, and we'll see, this may be my favorite part of this entire show. Boris Zukov misses a headbutt. Lord Alfred Hayes says, and I quote, this is a direct quote, "Ha ha, the Russian, he's so slow and ponderous with some of his moves." I legitimately completely lost it at this point. Lord Alfred Hayes just dropping truth bombs here.
Lord Al Hayes was on fire tonight. Yeah,
he was filling the role of the voice of us, Jesse Ventura, as we've talked about on so many of these shows we've reviewed. Just great stuff here from Lord Alfred.
Monsoon is alone because Heenan is down on the arena floor for his next face-to-face. It's Bobby Heenan and King Haku, and Heenan wants everyone to bow to the King Haku. This is Meng, who we referenced earlier in his not Mark Meng, but
not Mark Meng.
Meng
this
Meng.
is his older brother Meng. Haku.
Yes, this is when he was Haku. He was the king of the ring at this point.
Wearing a purple robe and crown. A interesting look here for the curly mulleted crazy man Meng.
And Heenan tells Hercules, "You should have taken his advice and been a slave to DiBiase," as Heenan sold his contract to Ted DiBiase to make Hercules his slave. So
I had completely forgotten about this storyline. Really, I mean, there's not a whole lot to this face-to-face.
Haku's not a good promo.
Haku is not a good promo, but he's not supposed to even ever do promos. That's why Bobby's there. Hercules is a horrendous promo.
Oh, so bad.
Bobby is great here, and that foreshadows how great he'll be in some of these face-to-faces, but he's tremendous. Hercules says, he starts talking about building a house on lies, but if you build a house on what is good, it will grow. Why would a house grow? I mean, I would like a growing house. That would be kind of cool, but I don't understand here. Bobby saves it by just being intense and calling Hercules a slave, and Hercules says he's no one's slave. It was pretty lame.
Well, he says he's the strongest man, and Heenan says, if you take a shower, you might not be the strongest man.
that was a very good line. But other than that, this was a total nothing segment. We then get like an extreme close-up for some reason of Gorilla running down the card yet again.
They run down this card for WrestleMania every opportunity they get.
Yes.
And we are a month away. We're still more than a month away.
It felt like such a hard sell, which again, I mean, that's clearly what this show was built around, but it was, it was crazy that it was so far away. After the commercial break, we're back to the face-to-face set in Binghamton. Vince McMahon is with Bobby the Brain Heenan and Andre the Giant. Andre the Giant here is wearing the most normal clothing of anybody on this show.
Yeah,
he is
absolutely.
wearing like normal business type of clothes for this era. He has an amazing green like checkerboard suit jacket. It's so wild because everybody here, every wrestler is out in their gear, and then Andre is just looking cool as hell, even though he's old, broken down Andre, just looking awesome.
So they freak out because Jake comes out with the bag with the snake, and Heenan's screaming, "Someone control this man!" And Jake...
Andre starts yelling unintelligibly. He's clearly scared of the snake, and then Vince says, and I quote, "You're safe, Andre."
Jake cuts his promo, and he's I don't match up with his size. Everyone has something that makes them snap.
The last time I was your size, I was a fetus, he says, which is
John Studd.
He says about Andre that the last time Andre was Jake's size, he was a fetus. I had a bit of Bobby Heenan confusion there, the big man, small man thing.
John Studd will be the referee for this match. We don't like him. No favoritism. Great. Heenan says, if you were man enough, scum, you wouldn't need to bring the bag. Another great Heenan program.
The way Bobby says the word scum here, I feel like when that word was invented and created in the English language, it was done with Bobby Heenan's pronunciation of that word in mind. It is just said with so much bile and just hatred. Is great.
He doesn't have a ton to work with in these segments, and he's giving it 110%.
Yes,
awesome.
This is where, the performer is far outshining the material here.
Oh, yeah. Studd came out. He says he will be impartial. Jake says, don't leave yet. He pulls the snake out. Andre runs away.
Yes, John Studd is terrible here. He's just yelling, I write down, bigger, less charismatic hacksaw.
Monsoon asks, whose corner will Elizabeth be in WrestleMania 5? As we cut to a match with the Outlaw Ron Bass versus Paul Roma, one half of the Young Stallions from the Boston Garden.
Yes, we are back in the Boston Garden. We're also back with Tony Schiavone and Lord Alfred Hayes. And my childhood memories of Outlaw Ron Bass was that he was terrible.
Yes.
There have been childhood memories, though, that for people who have listened to the previous episodes and previous season of this podcast, there have been childhood memories of certain wrestlers that, as we've watched them, it's been like, oh, wow, I was wrong about that guy. Let's see how that goes here with Outlaw Ron Bass.
I wrote something similar in my notes. We'll get there. So Roma knocks the cowboy hat off of Bass. He's ashamed by the haircut he got from Brutus the Barber Beefcake.
It's better than the haircut that he was given to that other guy in the barber chair on that tape that we watched in season 1.
Yeah,
at least he didn't get a mud mask from him that I know of.
The crowd was chanting Baldy, And
But he
Bass,
had hair. He just had a close cropped haircut.
he is by far not bald. He's not bald at all.
He's extremely not bald.
He has a bald spot and a receding hairline, but otherwise just a short haircut. So Bass starts out overpowering Roma. Quick comeback from Roma with drop kicks, flying head scissors. And this is where I note, as a child, I always found Ron Bass to be hideously boring. And I was wondering if I would discover a great worker or personality that I missed. But child me was absolutely correct. This guy's hideously boring. Just awful.
He is terrible. Like we've talked about on previous shows, particularly some of those 80s territory shows, like guys who are unremarkable, but like solid territory heels. And you'd like to think, or you would hope that was Outlaw Ron Bass. Incorrect.
Also incorrect was Al Hayes, as he says, sometimes, quote, Bass moves with a deceptive and alarming speed. No, he does not. This is a lie.
He does not, but he also, even worse than that, he contradicts himself because he starts the sentence off by saying Bass is ponderous, using that line again that he uses about Boris Zukov, but then says he has, as you said, deceptive speed. Tony Schiavone follows it up. This is where I note how hard Tony Schiavone is trying here to make this interesting. I think more to himself so that he can call this as much as make it interesting to the fans. He talks about the tremendous tendon strength of Outlaw Ron Bass.
These two guys do nothing. Nothing happens. It's painfully boring. On the outside, Bass posts Roma for the first action of the match. Bass then goes to work with offense that includes not requiring any speed whatsoever. So, again,
deceptive or otherwise.
No, none whatsoever. Roma battles back, drop kick, second rope fist drop. He hits 3 running elbow drops for a near fall.
Roma was fine here when he did stuff. There just wasn't a lot of stuff to do. I was disappointed that Lord Alfred did not call him Romeo Roma as he did a few years later. This is also the point where I note that we are deep back into WrestleMania 5 podcast preview time again here. Not from us, but from Lord Alfred Hayes and Tony Schiavone in the middle of this match. And once again, I cannot blame them. At one point, when Ron Bass is on offense, as you said, with a clothesline, buckles, punches, I am noting how slow and boring Outlaw Ron Bass is. Lord Alfred Hayes lies. He lies and says people are getting their money's worth here.
No. I was watching for free, and I was owed money for my time. Bass throws Roma to the corner. Roma leaps to the second rope, turns for a crossbody, but nobody home. He misses completely. Bass then hits his move, which is basically a lazy man's pedigree, where he's got the head between the legs, and he just drops to his knees. So, like a pedigree, if you don't hook the man's arms behind him, and Bass gets the pin.
Yes, this is if a pedigree involves a double underhook, this is a no underhook pedigree. I will say though, I remember him doing variations of this move where he would put the guy in that position and then just jump up and then just land back on his feet, and that was supposed to finish a guy. So he at least went down to his knees here, and that was more impact, but this was not very good.
No, and we'll continue the streak of not very good as we're still in the Boston Garden for Bad News Brown versus the Duke of Dorchester, Pete Doherty. Now, Doherty doesn't even take off his vest. He tries to jump Bad News before the bell.
Let's talk about the look of Pete Doherty. I wrote down bootleg Jimmy Valiant.
Yes, Jimmy Valiant without any of the charisma, or
he's wearing
bad hair, bad teeth,
blue trunks, like you said. He's missing one teeth for every one that he has. No knee pads. This black overshirt. He is the Duke of Dorchester. Apparently, he's like some, I don't know. He's a local Boston jobber that the fans love, but he's terrible.
And yeah, so Bad News just takes over quickly. Al Hayes is laughing hysterically
He
every
is.
time Bad News beats up Doherty. He is enjoying this beating.
He is, and Bad News Brown can give out a beating. I was thrilled to see Bad
He's
News here on the
so
show.
awesome. Just so
I've been
bad.
waiting. Bad News was so great. Like, look and demeanor wise, he really was like the proto Stone Cold Steve Austin. I just love the guy. And then, I mean, this is a guy who wrestled all over the world, went through the New Japan dojo system at a time where they did not really utilize foreigners in that way at all, as far as going through the dojo system. Just a tough, intimidating, really cool look, just awesome wrestler. And yeah, Lord is very much enjoying watching him beat up Pete Doherty. He basically, in so many words, just laughs and says Pete Doherty sucks. He says that, and I don't quite understand this, but that's fine because it's Lord Al. He says that Doherty does not look very Dukified.
Bad News misses a splash attempt. Doherty then jumps on him, and he starts biting Bad News' arm. Then he's biting the hamstring.
Before he basically hits the bite version of the Garvin Stomp, he hits maybe the worst leg drop I've ever seen. Like, I would imagine if Russ Francis decided to do a leg drop instead of a splash, it would have looked roughly like this.
Yeah, so he's working his way all over Bad News' body, biting everywhere.
For a long time. Like, this is uncomfortable.
No, hamstring, shoulder, lots of biting. So much
This felt
fighting.
more like a custom match than a pro wrestling TV match at this point.
Bad News back up, but Doherty bites his fingers, more biting. Doherty then throws Bad News into the corner. He comes charging in after him, but Bad News gets the feet up, kicking him hard in the chest, picks him up, and hits the Ghetto Blaster, his enziguri to the back of the head. I love the Ghetto Blaster as a finisher. He gets the pin. Bad News rightfully mad at the referee for all the biting after the match, and they make mention that he's still undefeated at this point.
Well, how about the replay of that Ghetto Blaster, that enziguri? They have a replay, a ringside shot. He absolutely kills Pete Doherty great. With this enziguri. It looked as though like the back of his brain was going to come out through his nose. It was nasty.
Yeah, it was awesome. Bad News Brown, one of my favorites. Heenan and Monsoon then run down. Get ready for it. More WrestleMania matches.
WrestleMania matches and potential WrestleMania matches.
Yes, and they talk about how busy Heenan will be at WrestleMania 5. Monsoon is still disgusted that Heenan sold Hercules. He screams, "You sold a man!" And Heenan is proud of it and says, "End of month sale, free gorilla, I'll throw you a deal." Vince is now back in the face-to-face, introduces Rugged Ronnie Garvin and Dino Bravo. Bravo out there with his manager, Frenchie Martin.
Well, and Rugged Ronnie Garvin out there looking like the #1 Hulkamaniac. It's basically inverted Hogan, but he's got red trunks and a yellow towel around his neck.
Now, Garvin was NWA World Champion.
1987.
He lost the title in November of 87. We're here in February of 89. So, a year and a half later from him being the #1 guy, the feuding with Ric Flair for the NWA World Championship, to now here he is having a face-to-face with Dino Bravo.
Well,
how
also
the mighty have fallen.
About 6 years after, I believe it was that last Battle of Atlanta show where he looked like some sort of Greek god or some like bodybuilder out of the 50s. Here he looks like the Ronnie Garvin that we all remember.
You're a strong man. You smell strong. How rugged are you? Lame. I already heard that joke earlier.
It was bad.
Garvin starts a USA chant. Bravo is from Quebec. So Bravo says he'll take care of an American like you. This was a nothing, just like their Mania match would end up being.
Yes. The most noteworthy thing here is the very sensual massage that Frenchie Martin was giving Dino Bravo's traps here as Dino was cutting his promo. Frenchie Martin with his monocle and his beret and his blue suit. He was like a D-level manager but an amusing visual momentarily. Again, this is an absolute nothing segment.
Monsoon and Heenan talk about Bravo hating America, but he loves the American dollar. And Monsoon says he's trying to work it out with WWF President Jack Tunney to get Bravo paid in Canadian dollars because he loves Canada so much. And Heenan yells, "Why do you get yourself involved?" And I howled with laughter at this delivery. It was so good.
Well, then how about they start talking about Gorilla having... He says he has all kinds of letters and telegrams from people around the country who Heenan has promised tickets to that Heenan did not have and could not deliver. This was just random but hilarious.
Yeah, Monsoon's yelling at Heenan, "Stop promising people tickets." Just great stuff.
We go to a face-to-face that is truly bizarre and is also indicative of just how much of a complete afterthought women, and particularly women wrestlers, were in the WWF at this time. We have a face-to-face between Sensational Sherri and Rockin' Robin, the World Wrestling Federation Women's Champion. This face-to-face, however, this is not about like a match the two that are going to have. It's not about like, hey, Rockin' Robin's defending the Women's Championship against Sensational Sherri at WrestleMania 5. No.
Yeah, I was racking my brain trying to remember. Like, did they have a match at WrestleMania 5? Why do I not remember that?
Exactly. I was thinking the same thing. But then we learned very quickly, this face-to-face is a debate between Sensational Sherri and Rockin' Robin, the women's champion, about whose corner will Elizabeth be in at WrestleMania. What?
Oh, this was so bad. Sherri is great all the time, and she's one, we talk about, like, as young children, people you didn't appreciate. I didn't appreciate Sherri as much as I should have. When I watch her through the eyes of today, what a super talent.
Everything she does, whether she's a wrestler in a match, as we've seen,
a manager,
whether she's a manager at ringside or here in a face-to-face, I will say, I don't know that in the many episodes we've done of this podcast now, I don't know that I've ever seen a bigger charisma gulf between two people in one segment than Sensational Sherri and Rockin' Robin. Robin, she says that Liz is a smart lady. She says that Liz will be okay with Hulk Hogan. It's just bad, and like they could have plucked to do this anyone out of the crowd, and they would have had more charisma than Rockin' Robin. Unfortunately, again, like they're just kind of put into a tough spot here, but it was not good.
Yeah, I think Rockin' Robin is she was actually she is a sister of Jake the Snake Roberts?
Yes, something like that. I do recall that there is family lineage between that sister or sister-in-law, something like that.
Yeah, so I know that
I feel like Sam Houston might have been tied in there somewhere.
Yeah, she's part of that family with them. So this was short, but Sherri was awesome. And
yes.
Match joined in progress.
Thank God. And just imagine, just picture this in your mind. We've seen Boris Zukov versus Coco Beware. We've seen Paul Roma versus Outlaw Ron Bass. Neither of those matches were joined in progress, and those were as bad and as boring as we described them. Imagine how boring the first half of this match between Iron Mike Sharpe and Jim Powers, the other half of the Young Stallions. Imagine how boring that must have been that they had to join this match in progress.
And how many wrestlers did they not have on this card to not just have Ron Bass and Mike Sharpe take on the Young Stallions?
Yes.
Why did we have to stretch this out to two matches, one that needed to be joined in progress? These poor fans, again, not getting their money's worth like Al Hayes was talking about earlier.
No. Well, there was one thing that I was really, really invested in this match, though. It was when they were showing, again, the ringside camera shots, and I really wanted to know what was going to happen in the match that I was looking at. Not this match. The NHL score is scrolling on the ribbon board. Hartford Whalers are up 2-1 in the second period on the Winnipeg Jets. Can I just watch the rest of that game instead of this match?
No, you have to watch Mike Sharpe's facials while he's in this test of strength.
And his yelling, his
absolutely
growling.
Hilarious. Yes.
Iron Mike Sharpe, by the way, black trunks, I should say, black boots, like big, thick, black forearm tape, and just the perm to end all perms in pro wrestling.
So Jim Powers with an atomic drop on Sharpe, and he sells this atomic drop by staggering backwards, falling into the ropes, and as he falls back, his arms get locked in the ropes like the old Andre the Giant spot.
Yes.
And Powers then, he punches him twice. He's punching him like he's grabbing his trunks to pull him up to punch him. I've never seen someone punch another person like that. That was super
Jim Powers was. We talk about guys, Jerry Lawler being one example, Bobby Eaton, Arn Anderson, guys that throw great punches. Jim Powers, not on that list.
Here's something else great he didn't do. He goes, and while Sharpe is still tied in the ropes, Powers runs to the other side, bounces off the ropes, gets a full head of steam, charging in, and Sharpe gets the boot up and hits Powers, knocking him down. This was comically bad. Powers looked like the biggest loser here because his opponent has no arms.
Yeah,
and he still got knocked down.
He was wrestling a man with no arms
who can't move. He can't
move. He is incapacitated. So if you're on offense and in the back of your mind, you would know that the only thing you need to look out for would be the man's legs. And instead, Jim Powers just runs into the foot of Iron Mike Sharpe here.
This was unbelievable. Yeah. I stopped the show to send you a video of what I just watched, and I said, "What the hell was this?"
One of my favorite spots in all the dozens of shows we've reviewed, just from an unintentional comedy standpoint.
So, so Sharpe takes over, forearms, punches, Powers with a backdrop to counter a pile driver attempt. Powers rams him head first 10 times to the buckle, then 10 more times at another buckle. Power slam out of nowhere by Powers, gets a 3 count. You can tell that the people in charge thought Jim Powers was the star of the Young Stallions and not Paul Roma, and they were
so wrong.
Just as wrong as Lord Al Hayes. Absolutely.
The one cool thing that Powers did in this match, and it was the finish, his power slam was awesome. It's hard to describe it. Basically, at the end of the rotation, he changes the grip so that he's holding him, I believe it's with his left arm, his left hand around the head of Iron Mike Sharpe. Very, very cool. Very different. I don't recall ever seeing that particular application of a power slam before.
Monsoon's alone, and he points out that the Red Rooster wants to challenge Bobby Heenan to a match at WrestleMania. And his advice was, if you get Heenan bent out of shape, catch him at the right moment. He's liable to say or do anything. And that's how you can get him to accept that match.
Some foreshadowing.
And we get a face-to-face between the Red Rooster, who's Terry Taylor, and Bobby the Brain Heenan, who's out there with the Brooklyn Brawler. Now,
we need to describe the Red Rooster.
Yes, we do.
You mentioned that the Red Rooster is Terry Taylor, a.k.a. Terrence Taylor, a.k.a. the Tailor-Made Man, from that I will say great U.S. Tag Title match from WrestleMania, or excuse me, WrestleWar 92.
No, stop.
I know we disagree heavily on that, but Terry Taylor came to the World Wrestling Federation and they gave him the gimmick of the Red Rooster. The comedy, if you can call it that, in this gimmick is that he looks exactly like Terry Taylor. He has the same trunks. He has the same boots. He has
same jacket.
The same jacket, the same wrist tape. The only thing that's different about him, same haircut, except for one thing, his like mid-length, sandy brown blonde hair at the top is kind of pushed up into like a bit of a faux hawk.
Yep.
And it's tipped with red hair dye. And then when he's standing there, he will kind of move his head forward and backward like he's a rooster walking and clucking.
Yes, he does like a rooster strut when he comes out. He's just doing the rooster head movement when he's standing there not saying anything.
But it's so like understated that it's so ridiculous. Like, it's not over the top. Like, he's doing it as though he's actually a rooster, and he just like has to do it like it's a tick. It is. I cannot describe to you as a child having seen. It's like he was my favorite wrestler or anything, but having seen Terry Taylor in the NWA and in the UWF prior to that, then seeing him come to the WWF as the Red Rooster was honestly one of the things that as a young child made me realize that like the WWF, that's not my kind of wrestling.
Heenan calls it out right away. He's like, you're a dummy. Your name's Terry Taylor. I gave you the name Rooster, and you shouldn't even call yourself that. Heenan is absolutely correct.
Keenan was incredible here. He calls him, quote, a limited athlete.
You're a limited athlete. You don't want me in the ring. You're a limited athlete.
It made me laugh. That phrase, limited athlete, particularly given some of the very limited athletes that we've seen in competition so far on this show. Meanwhile, Brooklyn Brawler is out here in like a comically torn up shirt and jeans. He's wearing a leather, I don't know, like newsy hat, but it's leather. He's got a stogie. And Bobby says that you're going to have to go through the Brawler to get to me.
Yeah, Rooster challenges him again. Heenan calls him a zero. Rooster says
I lost it. I like almost like water came out of my nose as I was drinking water during this segment, because that is your line.
That is my line.
If anyone could see into the text message exchanges between Jeremy and I through the years, whenever we're talking about wrestling or hockey or anything and talking about the relative merits or lack thereof of somebody, your line is always that someone is a zero. So to hear Bobby Heenan of all people here call the limited athlete, the Red Rooster Terry Taylor, a zero, that made my afternoon.
I yelled from the couch with a little fist bump there, like, yeah, you tell him, Heenan, that's a good one. And Rooster then says, the only thing you did for me was take my money.
At this point, Bobby Heenan responds. Bobby Heenan,
he's fired up.
He is the most fired up I've ever seen Bobby Heenan in a promo. And again, a direct quote, he says, let me tell you, I'm going to crack up here trying to say this. Let me tell you something, you barnyard piece of garbage. He then calls him, he kind of modifies his phrase earlier, but it's even better. He calls the Red Rooster a limited subhuman.
Yes. When a man is talking, know your place, you limited subhuman. Amazing stuff from Heenan, and just how fired up he was screaming this stuff was awesome.
Yeah, I mean, my notes say this is so dumb, but Bobby is the best, and that pretty much encapsulates this. Red Rooster's response to being called a barnyard piece of garbage and a limited subhuman is to say cock-a-doodle-doo and strut off the stage.
We're not kidding. He literally does a cock-a-doodle-doo. And then he does it like a rooster, and then does his rooster strut to walk away. This was so horrible, but Heenan was so awesome. We've talked about this guy's been given nothing all night to work with, and he's been by far star of the show.
Yes, this show may be like one of the greatest moments of Bobby Heenan's career, when you, like you said, you take into account what he had to work with and the output that he gave. Just tremendous stuff. What isn't tremendous, when we come back from the commercial break, we go to a match from Wrestling Challenge. At least we have Gorilla and Bobby on the call. It is the Honky Tonk Man versus Jim the Anvil Neidhart in singles competition.
Yeah, now, most of the syndicated, most of the Wrestling Challenge and the Superstars were squash matches. It was very exciting when you actually got a competitive match. So when you did get one, like I mentioned at the top of the show, a lot of times Primetime would pick that up, and you would get to see it again here. So we had two real names in Jim the Anvil Neidhart and the Honky Tonk Man, but it's all stalling early by Honky.
As if you expected anything different when it's Jim the Anvil Neidhart and the Honky Tonk Man. They could have done this exact same match in like 2005 with these two guys at their advanced ages, it would have been no different than this was.
Anvil hits an atomic drop on the Honky Tonk Man, and I want to say right now, Honky Tonk is an underrated seller of the atomic drop. We all think of Rick Rude and his selling of the atomic drop, but Honky Tonk Man, definitely underrated. Good stuff here.
He's got there's a little bit of the shake, rattle, and roll in the cell, which you can respect.
You get Anvil chasing Honky around the ring. He slides in as Anvil's coming in. Jimmy Hart hits Anvil with the megaphone, allowing Honky to get the advantage. Heenan on commentary says, "What happened to Neidhart there? Did he try to headbutt Jimmy Hart's megaphone?"
Yes. Shades of the Heenan call in the Royal Albert Hall show that we reviewed with the Rockers getting hit with the megaphone.
Anvil battles back, shoulder blocks, and a bear hug. While Anvil has the bear hug on, from behind, friend of the program, Greg the Hammer Valentine, runs in for the DQ. Hammer puts on the figure 4 on Anvil, and Honky drops some elbows. After what felt like an eternity, finally, Bret the Hitman Hart hits the ring, chases off the Hammer and the Honky Tonk Man, and they would become the future rhythm and blues team.
Yes.
When you thought, that Greg the Hammer Valentine character, pretty terrible. Could it get any worse? Oh, it could. Rhythm and blues. Hammer trying to do a knockoff, generic version of the Honky Tonk Man is.
Yeah, he dyed his hair black. It's kind of like Johnny Cash teaming with Elvis Presley here.
Is it? Is that what it's like?
I think that was what they were going for. They failed. The thing that I'm shocked that you didn't note, what happened here? There was a bear hug. Greg the Hammer Valentine came out, caused the DQ, robbing us of Gorilla Monsoon's analysis of the bear hug. There's no more heel move that could happen for Jeremy Deemer than for Greg the Hammer Valentine to come out and stop us from being able to hear Gorilla Monsoon analyze a bear hug.
There were so many things for me to be mad at as this was all happening that I couldn't keep them all straight. Yeah, it was real tough for me to. It's been a while since the randomizer threw me a Hammer Valentine, so it was caught me by surprise. Off to a face-to-face, the Rougeau brothers and the Bushwhackers.
The Rougeau brothers with Jimmy Hart, who looks like a Quebec Nordiques mascot. And again, I'm thinking about that ribbon board at the Boston Garden and wondering what's happening in the Hartford Whalers Winnipeg Jets game.
The problem with the USA is the economy, we're told by the Rougeaus. Too many foreigners like the Bushwhackers taking their money. The Rougeaus claim to be from Memphis and not Montreal at this point. They've relocated.
Exactly. The Rougeaus' gimmick was that they had relocated with Jimmy Hart to Memphis. They wave around American flags. I guess Jimmy's trying to
very tiny American flags. That's
it's very tiny like American flags you'd see people waving along like the side of the road at like a parade in the 50s. That's what they have here. I guess Jimmy's trying to like meet them halfway by wearing the Quebec flag gear.
The Bushwhackers threatened to move to Memphis. They called them the Ragu Sisters over and over again.
They are so bad here. I mean, they're the Bushwhackers, so you don't. It's crazy to think that like these guys as the sheep herders, a couple years earlier were like the most violent, feared team in all of wrestling and would have like barbed wire matches and bloody people up. And then what they were here in the WWF, it was bad.
Yeah, the theme of the promo was if we say Ragu Sisters enough, maybe it will eventually be funny. It never turned the corner for me.
No, nothing they did turn the corner.
No.
I forgot they did the whoa, yay thing, and they moved their arms up and down. It was terrible. There's nothing to it. The weirdest thing about this was they go back to the studio, not studio, and Gorilla Monsoon says how much he's looking forward to the match. And here's how he describes the Bushwhackers. This is an exact quote. He says they are strange but observant.
Thanks for the analysis. Hard hitting analysis.
Strange but observant. What are you talking about?
We see a video of the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, at the jeweler. He wants to
Ted
see...
and Virgil walk into what is described by Gorilla before they go to the thing. It's a very upscale jeweler.
Yeah, he wants to see the $1 Million belt that is being made for him. He wants lots of gold and lots of diamonds. That's the feedback he got from what he saw. We cut to WWF Superstars, where Vince McMahon and Jesse Ventura are on commentary for the Brain Busters. Arn Anderson and Tully Blanchard, managed by Bobby the Brain Heenan, taking on the Rockers. I was so excited when this showed up on my TV.
Yes, I was so hyped when I saw this. I'm like, Rockers versus Brainbusters.
I'm like,
I
we were told
them having great matches. There's no way this can't be a great match here. We're gonna get that great TV match that I talked about in the trailer for season 2. Like, I'm so fired up for this.
And I was mad at Gorilla and Bobby because they told me the feature match was Demolition and the Powers of Pain. I'm like, this is the feature match. Yeah, you guys are wrong. And the Rockers hit the ring, and the fight is on right away. No waiting for the bell.
Arn Anderson and Shawn Michaels going at it in the ring, which is as awesome as you would imagine Arn Anderson and Shawn Michaels brawling to be. Just so cool to see those two guys going at it 100 miles an hour. Marty Jannetty hits a crossbody off the steps onto Tully Blanchard, and we got brawling in the aisle here.
Yeah, Tully and Jannetty fight all the way to the back. Michaels and Arn in the ring, rolling around, fighting. Michaels eventually will catch Arn with a super kick. He mounts him again.
The lead into the super kick. Arn was moving here. He gets Irish whipped. He jumps up to the second rope in the corner, does a reverse leapfrog off the second rope over Shawn Michaels, and then Shawn hits him with a super kick. Just a really, really cool spot here.
Yeah, we got Michaels on top, raining down punches. As Heenan gets in the ring, he holds Michaels so Arn can get some shots in. Jannetty back in the ring. Double drop kick knocks Arn to the outside. Tully makes his way back. All 4 men fighting on the outside up the aisle. We're told no contest as the match never actually began. We only had seconds of action here, but what we got was awesome.
I was livid. This was like...
Me too. So mad.
This was like the... was it the Demolition, or no, what match was it that we saw? There was another match with the Brainbusters.
That was Demolition and the Brainbusters from Saturday Night's
It went
event.
11 minutes or something, but it got thrown out. This was so much more frustrating though, because it's the Rockers and the Brainbusters, and as it's going on, I'm like, oh my god, this brawling is awesome. This match is going to be amazing. And then there's a certain point, and again, this all happens over the course of maybe a couple minutes. There's a certain point where if you watch wrestling enough, you hit that moment where you realize, oh, this isn't good. This is going to be a disqualification or a no contest. And then sure enough, as the brawling is fantastic. It's awesome. And it's worth watching just to see these guys have a wild brawl for 90 seconds. But man, I wanted to see them have a great match.
And after all of the crap we've seen so far on this show in the ring, seeing actual talented Hall of Fame level professionals do their thing, even if it was only for minutes, you saw... It made me mad about all the stuff I had sat through to this point on the show.
Well, and all the matches that we had to sit through and watch. Well, the 2 long matches that we had to watch that were full matches, and then even the Jim Powers match that was joined in progress. That stuff got that much time. Then this brawl again. I get it in the context of the show. This is building to something. It was a brawl. It worked, but man, just again parachuting in here. I wanted my great TV match, and I did not get it.
Did not. And so now we've got another face-to-face. It's Ravishing Rick Rude with Bobby Heenan and the Ultimate Warrior.
Ravishing Rick Rude also with overdubbed, as I wrote, Prohibition-era striptease music.
Yes, not the famous stripper song that he would come out to.
No.
He takes his robe off. He says, "Witness the body that put the warrior to shame at the super pose down."
I also at this point I know that I need to apologize to I don't know, the perm rankings in pro wrestling, because earlier on in the show I talked about how lovely the perm was of Iron Mike Sharpe.
Sure. And
Rick Rude here, it is just on another level. This is a 6-star perm, throw in an awesome mustache. This is a a look, as the kids say.
Rick Rude looks like he could take his hair off and set it on the nightstand when he goes to bed and put it back on in its perfection.
It descended from the ceiling like that, like the ring announcing microphone would for Howard Finkel at MSG or Boston Garden. Same concept.
The Warrior interrupts before Heenan can speak. He runs out, chases everyone away, smashes a podium, runs off again.
I was fine with this because I guess I don't know. Maybe I would have loved to hear one of those crazy Ultimate Warrior promos about like going on a space odyssey and whatever.
This was too soon for that.
I felt like I had seen enough terrible yelling bad promos. So him just coming out, being the Warrior, throwing podiums around, beating his chest and running away, that's fine. What wasn't fine was that we have another match here between World Wrestling Federation competitors. It is the Brooklyn Brawler, because you need 2 Brooklyn Brawler segments. It is the Brooklyn Brawler with Bobby Heenan taking on Omar Atlas.
Now, before we get there, I want to say that Monsoon does refer to the Brooklyn Brawler as a reject from the Pat Patterson and Terry Garvin School of Self-Defense.
Yes, a very inappropriate, but
very
classic,
much so.
Very inappropriate, but a very often used Gorilla Monsoon line back in the day. I pride myself on knowing almost everybody who's appeared on all these random shows we've watched, even guys, from territory shows and opening matches in the 80s. I will cop to not having any idea who Omar Atlas is. I've never heard of him in my life.
Me neither.
He wore a white singlet and white boots. He did not appear to be a particularly young man.
He did not look a day under 65.
No. There were strong Jose Lothario vibes coming off of this man. This was a match from 1989 WWF.
Punching, choking, and biting by the Brawler. Brawler puts his head down. Atlas gets a few kicks and a forearm in. With every strike that Omar Atlas threw, he looked so unsteady. I thought he might fall down. It was really weird.
He was not strong on his feet. Maybe he got concussed from the hat-assisted paintbrush slap from Brooklyn Brawler to open this match. That was the high point. Brawler won here with this awkward second rope clothesline-ish move that if Tony was on the call here, if Tony Schiavone was on the call here, I trust he would have called a flying body attack. Brawler with the victory here.
Yeah, and Sean Mooney's in the event center where
which is different from update.
This is not
it's
update.
It's like 5 feet over, and he's in the center of the shot instead of off to the one side. So I guess like the middle of the room is the event center. The right side of the room is update.
He runs down just the title matches from WrestleMania 5. We get a great promo by Jake the Snake Roberts here, and I love the promos where it's just the guy in front of the graphic with their logo on it. Yeah, the green screen that's just got a graphic with the guy's logo on it. And
no
cool.
Interviewer. We don't have any hidden camera backstage stuff. It's just a pro wrestling promo in front of the guy's logo. The next thing I loved, because this is one of these things like putting us in the time and place that we're in. Sean Mooney is plugging the pay-per-view, and we get a graphic that says that the show will be available live on giant screen closed circuit or on a pay-per-view basis.
Call your cable company for availability. I will tell you, I saw WrestleMania 4 closed circuit at the Rialto Theater in Joliet, Illinois. That's where I saw WrestleMania 4.
I never did a closed circuit wrestling show. I never, because we've talked about it before. My first wrestling show, because my parents were not keen, particularly my mom was not keen on the pro wrestling. My dad was a pro wrestling fan, and that's how I got into wrestling. But she was not keen on me watching the pro wrestling, and certainly on me going to the pro wrestling. I finally went on my birthday in 1992 to my first WCW house show, my first wrestling show of any kind. The closed circuits era was over, by a couple of years at that point.
I saw WrestleMania 4 there. That was in March of 88 or April of 88. And by the August of 88, there was SummerSlam, and that was available on pay-per-view.
On a pay-per-view basis.
Yes, on a pay-per-view basis. So I was able to basis the heck out of that pay-per-view. So Vince tells us that his guest was to be the world's champion, the Macho Man Randy Savage, but he has refused to appear before these people, and so they play a taped interview with Savage.
This is amazing. First off, Randy Savage is looking like Randy Savage. He has an orange bandana, a tie-dye shirt, and these amazing goggle-style tinted sunglasses. Just a great late 80s Randy Savage look.
So Savage runs down his version of why the mega powers are exploding here. So
and as he does this, keep in mind that it goes from, we see Savage talking, this like tight close-up shot of him, and then it'll like fade into footage of these moments, these things that Randy Savage is providing as evidence of Hulk Hogan lusting after Elizabeth.
That's right. They were the mega powers were formed after WrestleMania 4, Hulk Hogan and Savage teaming up, and Hogan throughout the life of this team was doing things that Savage found questionable, and then he eventually snapped on Hogan and said enough is enough. And
yes, and it all played into Savage's paranoia and his jealousy, which had always kind of been a hallmark of his character to that point. But then you throw in Hogan and the relationship with Liz into the mix, and it was a powder keg waiting to explode.
Savage says, "You were after what was mine, Elizabeth, the lust in your eyes." Those words, and then they show a clip of Hogan saying, "She's my lady too, brother." Savage starts screaming, "Didn't like the taste, but I swallowed it anyway."
Savage, he was amazing in here. There's no way to do justice to how great Randy Savage was and how Randy Savage he was.
The intensity of everything he's saying, he was like ready to explode with anger and jealousy and rage with everything he's saying, and it was just it was an intensity that only Randy Savage could bring to something like this. Unbelievable.
Yes, and even that phrasing, that just the tone of his voice, that again, so unique. No one has ever been able to come close to pulling off a Randy Savage type character, just because you can't.
You can't.
The veins bulging out of the neck, and he, in one sense, he's one of the most over the top, ridiculous characters in pro wrestling. But in another sense, as you're watching this, you totally get drawn in, and you 100% buy into this guy being a dangerously jealous and paranoid human being.
We see a clip of Savage beating the Conquistadors, and I must see this match. Where someone send me a link to this match, please.
Yes, the Macho Man Randy Savage and Hulk Hogan versus the Conquistadors.
No, this was just Savage against a Conquistador, and Hogan was at ringside. Yeah.
Okay, that makes more sense than it was
to
Savage
help him out in case the other Conquistador got involved. Yes. And after Savage wins the match, he says, "Who showed up to steal my spotlight but you, Hulk Hogan?" And we see clips of Hogan posing after the match that Savage just won. And so he screams, he's jealous. "Stupid idea you had at SummerSlam, Hogan." And in a video, they show the Hogan saying, I've got a great idea. Elizabeth is our secret weapon. She'll take her skirt off. And Savage says he wanted to throw up after SummerSlam. "You have lust in your black heart for Elizabeth, and I have the proof." They showed another clip. This was of Elizabeth on Randy's shoulder after the match, after the SummerSlam match when the Mega Powers won. And Hogan puts his hand on her ass, but it could have looked like he was trying to touch her back.
Yeah, like trying to steady her.
Or if you're Savage, it could look like he's trying to cop a feel. And it was very subtle, but Savage was pissed. That sealed your fate, he said. At WrestleMania 5, you aren't taking my manager. You aren't taking my belt either. I know your strengths and weaknesses. I will not be denied. This promo was awesome. Randy Savage is so great. Just a special guy.
He says, I know your strengths and weaknesses. And he says, my eyes are the eyes of victory, and Hulkamania will be dead.
Awesome. Awesome stuff. And so we cut back to Vince after the Savage video, and he introduces Hulk Hogan, who comes out in front of the crowd. Hogan's at the podium, and it's you get this visual when he's standing at the podium, and Vince McMahon is standing right in front of him. And it's crazy seeing how much bigger Hogan is than Vince in 1989. Because when they wrestled in 2003 at WrestleMania 19, they were almost the same size. And here, Hogan is a giant compared to Vince McMahon.
This face-to-face, again, it's very different from the other ones, obviously, because Randy Savage wasn't there. Vince was awesome here. He was great. He kind of warns Hogan up front. Yeah, he warns Hogan up front that he is going to play the role of Randy Savage. He's going to play devil's advocate, and then he proceeds to grill Hulk Hogan and really try to find out, does he have lust in his eyes and his heart for Elizabeth?
Yeah, and so he went point by point from Savage's promo, and he's like, "Hey,
they could have had a chalkboard with bullet points. Like that's how specifically they went through each thing here."
Yeah, he said, when the Mega Powers were formed, I said I wanted Miss Elizabeth to be my manager. Nothing physical. You twisted the footage. He shows the unedited clip where he says she will be our manager. Vince then says, well, were you trying to steal the moment after the Conquistador match? And Hogan's like, no, I was watching your back like you told me to. I was pointing to you when you were posing with me. And then
so we see a clip of that. We see a clip of Hogan posing, doing his, and then the camera showing him. And instead, then the camera, he points to the camera. No, show him, show Savage.
Yeah, and Savage is posing with Hogan. So Vince then asks, was it not your idea to use Elizabeth as the secret weapon at SummerSlam? And he's like, hey, that was Macho's idea. You twisted that around. And we see the clip, uncut this time. Savage talks about her bikini. And so Vince says, okay, well, were you being suggestive on Elizabeth in the post-match celebration? And Hogan says it was not envy. It was envy, not lust. And he said he wanted to be, he helped put her onto Savage's shoulder. And the next move was going to get the belt. And I wanted to be on your shoulder too with Elizabeth. You've twisted this whole thing. I'm glad you're not here because I'd take your head off. Hogan rips his shirt off. What you're going to do when Hulkamania destroys you. This story is perfect. Savage's character was always jealous. You could see how this could be a total, complete misunderstanding every step of the way. And this was absolutely great stuff. One of the most perfect storylines in WWF history.
Oh, I think you can make a very strong argument that it's the best storyline in WWF history, the best build to a WrestleMania match, to a WWF championship match in history. And the other thing that's, you talked about how, obviously Hogan is pointing out everything. It's correct, but you can see where a guy from Randy Savage's mindset would end up thinking the things he 100%. Thinks. And then as Hogan is giving his explanation, like you as you're watching this, you're like, God, like this shouldn't be happening. You feel like this sadness, that the Mega Powers, this friendship between like the two most popular wrestlers in the company, like that this friendship went south. It went sour, and it didn't need to. But now Hogan is resigned to the fact that like he didn't want it this way, but it was going to have to be this way, and now they were going to have to fight.
We cut to Heenan, who chimes in between commercials and says, "She's leading both you suckers on. It's like a soap opera, The Young and the Ridiculous." So
Heenan, again, the other thing that's great is it's Heenan always, the Bobby Heenan character always hated the Hulk Hogan character,
Yes,
even when he wasn't involved specifically in the storyline with Hogan. And so it was always fun. I also loved how Hogan had a great line at the end of this whole thing where he ripped his shirt off and said that he was going to end the madness, which it's so great because obviously, like, to him, this whole situation is madness, but then, Macho Man Randy Savage, Macho Madness, very clever line there.
So now it's feature time. The main event of the show. This show is Demolition, the tag team champions, versus the Powers of Pain. These two will fight at WrestleMania, but in a 3-on-2 match. This is actually from the main event show that aired on NBC that was filmed in Milwaukee, where the Mega Powers had their breakup.
Yeah, so they referred throughout the night. There were several times on the show where they'd referred to what happened in Milwaukee with the Mega Powers, but they didn't actually say what happened, until what we saw in the face-to-face thing. But yes, this is here in the Bradley Center, a building that I have been in many times for concerts and for
AHL hockey.
Minor league hockey games. The building does not exist anymore, if I'm not mistaken. I know
Correct.
There's the Fiserv Forum, which they put up, and I believe they've since knocked down the Bradley Center. A cool building to see any style of show. But here we've got Tony and Lord Alfred Hayes again. The Powers of Pain are already in the ring here. They don't get an entrance.
No
intro here in this World Tag Team Championship match. Then Demolition comes out, and we get to hear that awesome Demolition entrance music, and about here comes the axe, here comes the smasher. Great stuff.
Yeah, the Demolition theme song is. This is also on 1987's Pile Driver, the album, and Rick Derringer performs the Demolition theme song. For me, it's up there as one of the greatest WWF theme songs of all time. This is up there.
I would say, it has to be up there. And granted, it's not like something that would necessarily fall into my wheelhouse of music, but it's a wrestling theme song, like an entrance music theme song that was created specifically for wrestling that you could actually listen to as an actual song.
And it was it was perfect for this gimmick, for this, because it was as iconic as, when you had the Road Warriors coming out and you would hear Black Sabbath's Iron Man, and you knew when you heard Iron Man the Road Warriors were coming out and it was going to get crazy.
The second that song started, and the same thing with this. It's actually a really good point that it's another way that they kind of tried to give this team another Road Warriors-esque
absolutely
part of their act. I also noted that, man, the Powers of Pain, they tried to make them look gear and paint and hair-wise exactly like the Road Warriors in like the mid to late 80s in the NWA. The long black tights with the thin, small red lettering going down the side, the shaved haircuts, the face paint, everything but the Warlord is just terrible. I don't know what other way to say it.
He's terrible.
A truly terrible professional wrestler. He was when they tried to give him that Phantom of the Opera looking mask, his entrance mask, and that ill-fated push that they were going to have him do a big feud with Hulk Hogan that just completely died on the house shows. Just a terrible wrestler.
Yeah, the Powers of Pain were involved in one of my favorite angles as a kid in the NWA with the actual Road Warriors during the weightlifting competition. But that's for another show. This show, we've got Demolition here. The brawl begins right away. That's the theme of the show tonight. Everybody's just brawling at the bell. And Smash goes to work on Warlord. Double teaming him. Axe is in there. He's yelling at Fuji, calling him a stooge again.
Fuge the Stooge.
Smash misses a charge in the corner.
The Barbarian's in. More double teaming by Demolition. Fuji.
There's a great line here from Tony. Barbarian comes in. He hits his big boot, which is always great. He goes for another kick, but Smash catches the leg, throws him down, and Tony calls this move, quote, upsetting the apple cart.
That's right. Fuji from the outside hits Axe in the leg with his cane, then uses the cane.
So basically, Axe bounces off the ropes, and as he does, Fuji puts the cane in front of his feet and pulls back to trip him up.
And then he uses the cane to choke Axe. Fuji with some more cane shots. The Powers of Pain now go to work double teaming Axe. After commercial, more double teaming on Axe. He's running to the post.
We get a nerve hold.
Oh, a lot of nerve holds.
A mini podcast talking about the 3-on-2 match they're going to be having coming up at WrestleMania. We get multiple nerve holds. We get Barbarian with one after a nice shoulder breaker. Then Warlord with a nerve hold. And at this point, I note that like his hair is roughly like that of Kevin from The Office, except for that it's black on one side and brown on the other.
Axe runs into the post. More cane shots from Fuji. Warlord puts his head down to backdrop Axe, but Axe hits him with a forearm, makes the hot tag to Smash. Smash on fire, slams each man.
Yeah, this was a great hot tag from Smash. He was running wild. Like you forget that while they were really good heels, they were also really good fiery baby faces.
Oh yeah, no, Smash coming in on a hot tag was running wild. Clotheslines Barbarian over the top rope to the floor. Smash drops Warlord throat first across the top rope. Barbarian makes the save, and they double team Smash. Warlord's holding Smash up like he's gonna drop him in a spine buster, but he holds him up there. Barbarian hits a flying clothesline off the top rope on Smash.
This was basically the poor man's Doomsday device. We've seen a lot of teams do this. I actually remember even seeing the Road Warriors do that a few times in their late, like mid 90s run in WCW. It was just funny that they basically gave them like a weaker version of the Road Warriors finisher here.
Axe in makes the save. He dumps the Warlord to the floor. Axe goes after Fuji, gets his cane, and starts hitting both the Powers of Pain with the cane.
The cane that Lord Alfred Hayes refers to as a Malacca cane earlier.
Fuji's in, and he throws the Japanese ceremonial salt into the face of Axe. Ref has had enough, calls for the bell. Fuji breaks the cane over the back of Smash. Demolition is announced your winners by disqualification, which was hilarious because watching Hebner, the referee, try to not see Axe beating these guys with the cane was so comical.
This was like Bullet Club 2000 stuff here, or 2020 stuff, I should say. This was for the Big Audio Nightmare listeners here. I felt like I was watching Evil and Dick Togo here with Earl Hebner as the referee. Demolition wins by DQ. The story going into this is that then, was Smash, did he have his back injured from this cane shot? That's what they were selling. But again, I note that we are 6 weeks away.
So far away.
WrestleMania. I would think Smash could recover by then.
We're also trying to find out. Axe might be blinded by the salt. Smash is screaming for help. He gets a towel for him. And
hopefully Axe can find a bottle of water to put in his eyes at some point in the next 6 weeks.
But then we're blessed with more of Demolition's theme song as they leave the ring. There were 3 guys at ringside at a WWF show, and I couldn't figure out if they were dressed as Big Bubba Rogers or what. They were holding up 4 fingers. I didn't know what I was looking at. I'm still confused by it.
I thought that maybe one of them was Amish roadkill time traveling back. There are a lot of possibilities here. None of them are entirely clear.
Monsoon and Heenan say that if you hit someone with that much salt, it would be bad for their heart.
Yes, that was great. I wrote that down as well. Brain in particular said that, and I thought that was just a fantastic line.
Heenan predicts new champions at Mania, and he keeps saying, "Do you want to know what's going on next week?" And Monsoon's like, "Yeah, what's going on next week?" He goes, "Well, we're here 2 hours, not 3.
and I'm not telling. I'm not telling what's happening next week, and the show goes off the air. Awesome show. The matches left a lot to be desired, but that was the story of primetime wrestling.
Would say this was an awesome show.
No, I had so much fun. It was awesome because Macho Man Randy Savage is awesome. The Mega Power storyline is awesome, and Bobby the Brain Heenan was off the charts with just showing off what he could do with nothing. Here, yes. Heenan, here's nothing. Make it something, and he did throughout the entire show. And for those two performances alone, I enjoyed everything I saw here. The couple minutes of brawling we got from the Rockers and the Brainbusters, that was enough to make this a worthwhile show.
I will agree with you that all those things you laid out were great. This was not an awesome show. And
by primetime standards, correct. It was not an awesome show because...
Well, by any standards.
No.
And I appreciate all those things you said, but then you said that those things made everything else great. As great as Bobby Heenan was calling the Red Rooster a limited subhuman,
yes,
that did not make Iron Mike Sharpe versus Jim Powers great. It did not make the 2 minutes we saw of the Rockers and the Brainbusters brawling did not make Boris Zukov and Coco Beware great, nor did it make the Bushwhackers tolerable. There were some really entertaining things on this show.
Yes.
But this was a 3-hour show, and a lot of it was filled with a lot of really bad stuff. That said, again, I had a good time watching it, and the things that were good were really entertaining, but the things that were bad were just mind-numbingly AWA 1987 boring.
Which I think is you could say is almost the formula of primetime wrestling.
Like, yeah, no, that's true.
Really,
it works far better. That formula is much more digestible in the normal 2-hour format than here in the 3-hour format. Like I have zero doubt that if we watch another primetime that is of a similar quality and a similar format, but 1 hour shorter, I would probably have a much higher opinion of it.
No, I agree. If you had cut the face-to-faces in half and didn't make me see the Bushwhackers and the Rougeaus, to not have to see Ronnie Garvin and Dino Bravo, if you cut some of those and
cut one of those matches, cut one of those not joined in progress.
Please,
we had Brooklyn Brawler versus Omar Atlas.
I forget.
Lawrence Dukov versus Coco Beware. Ron Bass versus Paul Roma and Jim Powers.
Two separate singles matches. Yeah, that was a personal attack on me.
And Jimmy Angel Neidhart versus Honky Tonk Man. I defy you to think about that again and tell me this was, quote, an awesome show.
You're right. This was not... Those things I mentioned earlier were awesome on this show, but yes, as a whole, this show is not good or digestible in a 3-hour format. You would have to break it up and not watch it all at once to really appreciate it. It was, and yes, they could have cut a bunch of stuff. Now, for me, so what was your worst thing on the show? We talked about all our favorites already. What was the worst thing on the show for you?
Oof. I won't say that any of the face-to-face things were the worst thing on the show because they were all really short.
Yeah.
Even though I'm tempted to say the Bushwhackers and the Rougeaus was maybe the worst, but it was short. I can't say Mike Sharpe versus Jim Powers, A, because it was joined in progress, and B, because I got an update on Hartford versus Winnipeg. I would say it's probably, and then there's also Bad News Brown and Pete Doherty, another great singles match. I would say probably
I enjoyed that one.
For me, I did just to get to see Bad News. I would say for me, Paul Roma and Outlaw Ron Bass, just because Ron Bass was so boring and so slow, and this match just felt a million years long. So for me, that was the worst thing on this show.
No, that is by far the correct answer. I agree 100% that was the worst thing. Just absolutely awful. And yeah, so this was, hopefully we get another primetime wrestling.
We got to get best thing on the show. You got to give up best thing on the show. I am struggling. For me,
I named so many that were so great already.
Yes,
from Bad News is
you got to pick one though.
Oh man,
I'm gonna have to say Savage's promo was the best thing on this show.
I will say, and I think that's a valid choice. I am going to say Bobby Heenan just absolutely just destroying, verbally devastating the Red Rooster.
That was so awesome.
So many ways. He had 3 or 4 absolutely killer lines, and the delivery and the intensity from Bobby, particularly in that was the most enjoyable thing. If we're talking in-ring, most enjoyable thing was that brief window into the greatness of the Rockers and the Brainbusters.
Yes, the best thing in-ring by far was Shawn Michaels fighting Arn Anderson in the ring.
Yes.
That was by far the best thing we saw. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. A reminder that the best way to interact with this show is via social media. So Twitter, @WrestleAtRandom. We're always, DMs are open. Send us a message. We're always looking to interact, talk about the show. We know this is evergreen content. You might be listening to something on season 1 and want to mention something. Go ahead. We'd love to hear about it. Hit us up there. If you stay off of Twitter, because it is a cesspool, we also have an email account, wrestlingatrandom@gmail.com. You can hit us up there. We want to hear your feedback. We want to hear your thoughts about it and interact with the show that way. And make sure that you're also following us on Instagram as well, the same, @WrestleAtRandom. Of course, WrestlingAtRandom.com has all the links to subscribe. Make sure that you're subscribed to this podcast via your podcatcher of choice. We're everywhere podcasts are found. And every single Thursday on social media, we will announce what this upcoming Sunday's episode will cover. So make sure you are subscribed to the podcast, never miss a show. If you haven't gone back and listened to the back catalog of this podcast, make sure you do it, because they are just as fresh and just as new as the week they came out. And hopefully you can discover some new fun matches like we did when we did season 1, which covers mostly pay-per-view events, and now, of course, season 2, where we are doing weekly television shows. And so with that, I want to make sure that we remind everyone to subscribe, but also tell your friends about us. Tell your wrestling fan friends. Tell your friends that used to be wrestling fans about the show. They might want to take a trip down memory lane with us as well.
And also make sure to tell, let's say you've had a Hulk Hogan, Randy Savage like falling out with a former friend over the years. Still tell them about this podcast. I don't think it will reunite your personal mega powers, but I think they'll enjoy the show.
I guarantee they will. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I want to thank you for joining us, Adam.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeremy. This was a roller coaster of a show to watch, a fun trip down memory lane for a pay-per-view that I remember very fondly. But good Lord, there are a few guys on this show that I hope we never see matches of them again on this on future episodes of this podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking at you, Ron Bass. And I want to thank everyone for listening, and we'll talk to you again next time.